Hi, thank you for coming here today. Please, to start, just briefly introduce yourself.
Yorana, greetings from Maohinui, French Polynesia. I'm Tamatoa Tipuhiari. I'm a Maohi scholar and a prospective PhD student in anthropology. And I will look at the indigenous narratives of nuclear impacts.
My name is Betty Radule. I am a daughter of Oceania from the Marshall Islands and Pohnpei in the Federated States of Micronesia. But I sort of got started in this work as a student at the University of the South Pacific, watching my peers perform activism on Nuclear Victims Remembrance Day.
So I'm a second generation survivor of those British nuclear tests, and in particular at Emu Field, which were the first mainland tests that took place in Australia in 1953.
Thank you for having me. My name is Pam Kingfisher. I'm a Cherokee woman from the Cherokee Nation. I'm a citizen in Oklahoma here in the United States. But I was born and raised in Washington State. My father moved to Washington to work on the Hanford bomb plant in 1943.
My name is Hirdoulet Rahmatullah, and I am aspiring youth advocate from Shymkent City, Kazakhstan, and I'm concerned about nuclear security and AI safety.
My name is Hinamweura Morgan Cross. I'm a Tahitian. I'm born in Tahiti. I'm 35 years old. And I became an activist in 2018 because I realized that all the disease in my family and also the leukemia that I have was the consequences of the nuclear weapons.
My name is Benedict Kabua Madison. I'm the executive director of the Marshallese Educational Initiative. The Marshall Islands were used by the United States for nuclear development, where they tested 67 nuclear weapons. That's about 1.6 Hiroshima bombs every day for 12 years, from 1946 up until 1958.
There are two tests that were taking place back then in 1953. There was Totem 1 and Totem 2. They were conducted on Yankunytjatjara country, on our First Nations or Indigenous country, which is the Yankunytjatjara people. The Yankunytjatjara people occupied that land. They hunted, they gathered, they practiced their traditional ways, their cultural ways. They spoke Yankunytjatjawanga, their language. So it was, just from those lived experiences and the scars on the country and even scars on people, on our family, we want to keep those stories alive and passed on to the next generation so they know. So, people got very sick. In Dad's story, in Dad's case, he was blinded by those British nuclear tests, and Totem 1, the black cloud that fell over his community.
We're talking about forced relocation, people having to leave their traditional homelands, people's home being destroyed, lands that they depended on for centuries for food in order to survive.
I've heard so many stories about testing in the past where our people were told not to fish in their own waters, which is impossible because that's how we get our food, or eat the coconuts on the island. This makes our people dependent on imported foods and processed foods that are not the same healthy diets that they are used to.
And then, of course, we also have to deal with the high rates of diabetes. When lands that belong to people are destroyed, they have to then depend on food that's imported from the outside world. So processed foods such as canned food, ramen, rice, food that American doctors are now telling us we should not be eating.
We also had many change on our population because we were used to live on the islands, and with the development that came, everybody came on the main island. There are now many poverty in our country, so we had a big change of our society. Also, the fact that most of the population, they don't even go fishing, they don't even go planting. In just 30 years, everything has changed in Maohinui because of the nuclear test.
we cannot see the consequences, like physically see it, but we can see through the diseases, people having cancers, and also some testimonies where some parts of the environment or different lands have been, impacted by it. And now I know that on some islands we are not able to go and also to fish because there's still this radiation exposure. And on the other hand, it's also, as I mentioned, people dying without even being acknowledged that their deaths are related to nuclear weapons.
Nuclear weapons testing has contributed to nuclear-related illnesses such as cancer, for example, leukemia, thyroid, stomach, liver cancer.
In the Marshall Islands, there is a radioactive dome that was supposed to be temporarily storing nuclear waste, but it's still there, and studies show that it is leaking a lot of plutonium into the ocean.
We cannot talk about nuclear weapons without talking about climate change. The Marshall Islands is a perfect example because, one, we are on average 2 meters above sea level, so we are really at the front line of the climate crisis. But at the same time, we're also dealing with waste. We're dealing with a nuclear legacy that is still there in the Marshall Islands. We talk about the Renner Dome, which is located on Enewetak, one of the 2 areas in the Marshalls that was used for nuclear weapons testing. And so this is where we bring in the nuclear and climate nexus, because scientists have warned us that if the country were underwater today, this structure that was built back in the 70s, which holds 3.1 million cubic feet of nuclear debris, it will break open if it's underwater, further doing more damage to the environment.
Well, as I said, I grew up at the bomb plants. Pretty much everyone in my town, their dads worked at the bomb plant, and we grew up knowing the rabbits and the snakes were hot, and that we shouldn't eat them, but not understanding why or understanding the science. So later, growing up and knowing, my daddy did that. My daddy did that to Hiroshima, Nagasaki. That is a big one to swallow and take on.
Well, there is a Kazakh painter without arms, Karapek Kuyukov, who is a native of Semipalatinsk. So he's one of the strongest persons I know, because without hands, he can create masterpieces, and he sells them and raise a lot of funds and donate this money to the people who are affected by these nuclear weapons. And there are also second and third generation survivors, namely females, Aygerem Yelgildi or Aygerem Seytenova. Each of their story is unique. Some of them are fighting with cancer, some of them lost a lot of their family members, and it's really hard to talk about this and listen about this.
Communities around on the outskirts of those test sites at Emu Field and at Maralinga hold many of those stories as well. So we need to gather those stories and those testimonies and to really hear, what they remember. They spoke to me about, leaves burning off the trees, those sorts of memories that have been passed on from their elders to the next generation as well. So, it's a big scar that is left on country, but also the loss of a lot of that cultural knowledge and that stories that are recorded in our lands, on our traditional lands. And these are the things that I call our intangible cultural heritage as well, was also lost when those bombs went off on our traditional lands.
It's not a subject that we talk about, and mostly when I'm born in 1988, it wasn't learned at school, and also in my family it was very taboo. I can confess that, like, for my grandma, it's a real trauma. She's afraid of speaking sometimes, or it's too difficult because it was a hard time for our population. And also today, she she always cry when she see me because she knows that I'm sick and I'm fighting for leukemia, and she felt a lot of culpability.
I need to confess that the nuclear weapons, and particularly, as my region has been impacted by nuclear weapons, it's something that I haven't been educated on. It was pretty hard for our predecessors and ancestors to just share about and talk about nuclear weapons because, the majority of our people were working on nuclear sites. And, during that period, we also have this culpability, feeling guilty of participating in this nuclear period. And we are like, okay, should we talk about that? Or how can we talk about that? But I want to mention the notion of secrecy, where some of them were not able to share about nuclear weapons and, they involvement on nuclear sites.
Asking questions in the 4th grade, going, Daddy, that ain't right. Why are they doing that? What are you talking about? I didn't know that just asking a question at the dinner table was a radical act and that it would follow me through my lifetime of why.
I think the first generation started talking about it during the testing period. There were the 2 petitions that were submitted by Marshallese leaders, many of them who have now passed, they're no longer with us, asking the UN to stop or halt U.S. nuclear weapons testing in the Marshall Islands. And so it was those people who really started this nuclear disarmament movement around the world.
Kerr-McGee was a very polluting industrial nuclear company, and they had recently killed Karen Silkwood because she was a whistleblower at a Kerr-McGee plant in Oklahoma, and they had opened up Sequoia Fuels 30 minutes from our town where they were refining uranium, bringing that yellow cake out to Oklahoma, and it operated for, 15, 18 years. We saw it shut down in 1993 due to our efforts, but you just have to talk to people and keep reminding them. And because we shut that in 1993, there's a lot of students that I work with who've never heard the story. And I realized we need to tell this story.
We're very remote and very isolated. Our closest town would be 500 kilometres north. So we're really isolated, and being isolated, we deal with lots of other issues within our communities. The remoteness plays a huge part, and people carry the stories but often don't have the ways and means of communicating those stories as well. It's not until you get talking about the story, talking about the bomb, or talking about what we call erari, which is the poison, then people start to remember that story and remember what happened.
We must fight in front of an international community to denounce what France did to us, because I really feel that we have been poisoned. And today we are also condemned to pay all the cost of this disease, because France gave us back the health competence in 1977. So today, all the Tahitian people have to pay for all the cost of the cancer.
I know that talking about these things are confrontational. Sometimes they're uncomfortable when we call out nuclear-powered states, when we note the injustices that have been done. For example, we have spent the past few days reminding the United Nations of their complicity in enabling nuclear violence by ignoring the petition of the Marshallese people to halt testing in their islands after it was done.
Working on nuclear weapons is definitely not easy. And sometimes we are like, oh, are we really, okay or crazy to study or to active, to be this advocacy on nuclear weapons? So it also helps us, this also helps us to, to tell yourself that, yes, it's okay, you're on the right path, and we can bring something to the table.
The first change since I'm elected is that I have more power, and mostly at my assembly. My first text was in September. I made a resolution on the support of the TPNW, and it has been voted by all my colleagues, and I thank them. And it was important for me to do that, just to say to France who always repeat that they want to turn the page on the nuclear history. This resolution was a message to tell them that we will never stop fighting for the recognition of what happened to our people. And it was also a message to all the international community to tell them that we exist.
It's interesting to hear here that other people have stated there was a lot of activity and activism in the 80s, and then it really went down, and now it's on a resurgence. But so are the bombs, and so are the poisons, so are the plans to do more damage to people. We're just seeing it ramp up all around us. And the global war that we're in right now, it's all here. So it is on the table and very important that we uphold the treaties, stop these weapons, and preserve the planet.
We need to continue to push governments. If the German public is, watching, I encourage them to push the German government to, one, end their nuclear sharing policy, and two, try to see how the German government could help nuclear-affected communities, whether that's with environmental remediation or victims' assistance.
Well, if I tell the German government, I will also tell the French government, because the French government hasn't, signed and ratified yet the treaty. Being a state observer, an observer state into TPNW, it's a good step to start, understanding and considering the cry of the land or the cry of the people. We are maybe not requiring Germany or France to sign and ratify the treaty like tomorrow, but let's go step by step. So we invite the German and French government to be present and to be an observer state into the third MSP, though.
I think we should work on the medical care. We really all need assistance, better hospital, better way to treat the cancer. Like in Tahiti, we have 20 years late for the treatment of the cancer. So some people, if they were living in a developed country or in the United States, they will be able to live, to be treated. In Tahiti, there are many people that are dying because we don't have the machine to cure them.
I hope that people in Germany or wherever they are watching this interview from will take the time to learn more about the impacts of nuclear weapons. And we'll take the time to learn more about how nuclear weapons actually affect them and their lives, because they will impact every single one of us on this planet.
Our voice is usually undervalued. Let's say we are unheard mostly, but we are working towards it. And I really ask to every German citizen or European citizen to just care about it and start with learning. And when it comes to national level actions, Kazakhstan is proposing to create international trust fund where any members, any countries can actually donate financial resources, and it will be allocated among people who suffered from nuclear weapons around the world, not only Kazakhstan, but also, for example, Marshall Islands, Kiribati, and other nations.
We have to find this place to be together and to find some, ways through all of this mess together, because it's bigger than any one country, it's bigger than all of us. We have to do it together, states, parties, civil society, all together.
Just attending to MSP, not only do I see a lot of nuclear-affected community members, but I see a lot of young people from all over the world, from different cultures, different countries and continents. And so that gives me hope that we will abolish these nuclear weapons once and for all.
I have had very little hope that the United States would ever stop its evil rampage that's on. But seeing all these other countries, hearing these states' parties, especially these brilliant women, oh my goodness, that wasn't happening in the 90s. We weren't at too many tables, you know, so that's really exciting to me, and that they get it. They really get it.
There's an African statement which says that if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go further, go as a group. I witness here that thanks to civil society, we can see improvements in the advocacy on nuclear weapons all around the world. So we need to keep doing that. We need to keep advocating for truth and justice wherever we are and in whatever we are doing.